had made him a cultural icon. He was treated with genuine reverence, reportedly even given housing and public recognition by government figures. He lived there for the final 2 decades of his life. In 1989, after friends reported him missing, police found that Williams had died of a ruptured brain aneurysm roughly a week earlier, alone in his Buenos Aires apartment. He was 65. Mumi has said simply that after the show ended, the two never saw each other again. Bob May stumbled into the role of the robot almost by accident, having gone to the studio for an unrelated audition. Fitting into the roughly 200-pound costume was reportedly the entire audition process. The suit ran brutally hot under studio lighting, and on at least 2 occasions during filming, May is said to have lost consciousness inside it from lack of oxygen. He also smoked cigarettes inside the costume between takes, which led to a now-famous anecdote. Irwin Allen allegedly panicked upon seeing smoke rising from the seemingly empty robot, only to discover May inside enjoying a cigarette. From then on, whenever a script called for the robot to emit smoke, the job reportedly fell to May himself. Despite performing nearly every physical gesture that made the robot beloved, May was never credited on screen during the show's original run, which meant lower pay and reduced residuals as the franchise grew into a long-running commercial success. Decades later, he and his wife were living in a mobile home park that burned down in a 2008 wildfire. He died of congestive heart failure 2 months after that fire at 69. In his later years, May became known on the convention circuit for staying at autograph tables until every fan had been seen, regardless of how long it took. Before the version of Lost in Space audiences came to know, Irwin Allen produced a far more serious pilot titled No Place to Hide, made in late 1964 on what was then one of the largest budgets ever spent on a television pilot. It featured an acclaimed crew, including a 3-time Academy Award-winning cinematographer, and told a straightforward survival story about a family of scientists stranded on an alien world. No robot, no villain, no comic relief. CBS executives loved it enough to buy the series immediately, but insisted on changes, a recurring antagonist, and a robot for merchandising and conflict potential. The result was Dr. Zachary Smith and the robot as audiences would come to know them, and much of the original series pilot footage was later repurposed and split across the first several episodes of Season 1, with narrative workarounds explaining why Smith and the robot were conveniently absent from scenes filmed before either character existed. The show premiered in September 1965, with a title theme composed by a 24-year-old Johnny Williams, later known as John Williams, composer of Star Wars, Jaws, and Indiana Jones. Lost in Space is often remembered as science fiction's underdog against Star Trek. But in the ratings of the era, it was Lost in Space that consistently performed better. Their rivalry began even before either aired. Gene Roddenberry reportedly pitched Star Trek to CBS, while the network was already developing Lost in Space and had no interest in a second competing series, pushing him toward NBC instead. One frequently cited episode of behind-the-scenes overlap. When Lost in Space's makeup team needed pointed ears for an alien character and were short on time, they borrowed the actual molds used for Spock's ears from the Star Trek production, a case of shared resources between friendly crews rather than any real feud. Off-camera, a real relationship was quietly forming. Angela Cartwright and Bill Mumi grew up together on set from early adolescence, were tutored together, and were briefly engaged as young adults before parting ways amicably. They remained close friends for decades afterward, appearing at conventions together well into their 70s. Mumi also happened to be a devoted Star Trek fan throughout the run of his own show, and later appeared as a doomed Starfleet officer in an episode of Star Trek, Deep Space Nine. Lost in Space ran for 83 episodes across 3 seasons and never received a proper finale. The Robinson family was left stranded, believing rescue was still coming. The cancellation reportedly came down to a budget dispute. CBS offered a 4th season with a reduced budget, and Irwin Allen refused. The cast learned of the shows end much the way Lockhart did, without ceremony. When June Lockhart died at her Santa Monica home on October 23, 2025, at the age of 100, she was the last surviving adult star of Lost in Space. Her passing closed a chapter on one of the most peculiar and enduring stories in American television, a show remembered fondly by generations of viewers, but built on personal wounds, quiet rivalries, and unexpected devotion that few outside the cast ever fully understood. By 2025, only 3 original cast members from the Robinson family remained. Bill Mumy, who played young Will Robinson, Angela Cartwright, his on-screen sister Penny, and Marta Kristen, eldest daughter Judy. Lockhart, who played their television mother, had continued speaking candidly in her later years about her experience on the show, including the blunt ways she learned it had been canceled. There was no phone call, no meeting, no thank you from network executives. She simply read about it in the newspaper. Mumy, only 14 when the show ended, has described learning the news from his agent and going home in tears, having believed a 4th season was already secured. That belief evaporated the moment the network's renewal list came out without Lost in Space on it. By the time these recollections became public in later years, several cast members were already gone. Mark Goddard, who played pilot Don West, died of pulmonary fibrosis in October 2023 at 87. Jonathan Harris, the actor behind the unforgettable Dr. Smith, died in 2002. Bob May, who wore the robot costume for all 3 seasons, died in 2009, and Dick Tufeld, the robot's voice, followed in 2012. Yet the surviving Robinson children have stayed close. In March 2026, Mumy posted a photo of himself with Cartwright and Kristen, joking that Judy, Penny, and Will Robinson had been spotted together again, 60 years after the show first aired. Their bond, largely unknown to the public for decades, may say more about what production meant to the people inside it than any ratings chart ever could. Before he became Dr. Smith, Jonathan Harris was born to Russian immigrant parents in the Bronx, the son of a garment district worker. He changed his surname from Karasukin to Harris as a teenager, earned a pharmacy degree he never used, and built an acting career, eventually including Broadway and The Twilight Zone, almost entirely through force of will and self-invention. When producer Irwin Allen offered him the role of Dr. Smith, the character as written was a menacing saboteur who murders a security guard in the pilot and programs a robot to kill the Robinson family in their sleep, a role designed to be dispatched within 5 episodes. Harris recognized the danger in playing a character with an expiration date, and he responded by quietly rewriting the part himself. He began showing up on set with pages of new dialogue written overnight, reshaping scenes so that the story consistently orbited around his character. The now iconic insults he hurled at the robot, the invented put-downs and theatrical cowardice, were never in the original scripts. Harris crafted them himself, reasoning that Smith needed a comedic excuse to keep attacking a machine that could expose his schemes. The strategy worked. Fan mail for Dr. Smith reportedly reached the thousands each month, and Irwin Allen later admitted publicly that Harris, not the writers, had shaped the character's direction. Harris also negotiated a special guest star credit for every episode of the series, a billing arrangement said to be unprecedented in American television at the time. Guy Williams arrived on Lost in Space already a household name, having spent 4 years as Disney Zorro. He was cast as Commander John Robinson, the character meant to anchor the show. But as Dr. Smith's storylines expanded season after season, Williams' screen time steadily shrank. By the 3rd season, colleagues have said he would appear on set for only a handful of lines, while Harris, Mumy, and the robot carried most episodes. Mark Goddard later described real tension building around the imbalance, and even Harris acknowledged how difficult it must have been for a hired leading man to end up with only occasional dialogue. Williams reportedly filled his idle hours on set with music, astronomy, and chess, and in one well-known account, snapped in frustration at Harris before catching himself and correcting his own words to refer to character rather than the actor. After the show ended, Williams found that Hollywood work was hard to come by. But in Argentina, where reruns of Zorro,